Let's start with the requirements. I will immediately note that I will not tell you what you need to have, but I will tell you what I have. Some may not be required, but I'll mention everything I have. Here is a complete list of the basic things you need to have. Now let's move on to the basic graphical improvements to make your game look better even without Reshade installed. Let's start with the textures of the sky. The best at the moment are the Macirolo textures. All links to mods will be in the description. The installation instructions will be in the downloaded archive. The textures of the sky alone greatly affect the realism and perception of the game. I will also leave links to my own sky textures, which I edited for some special events. These are mostly evening sky textures based on onboard racing replays. I tried to convey a realistic color scheme, as similar as possible to what we see in replays. Custom reflections are included with each custom sky texture. Now we will smoothly move on to reflections, and I will also tell you how to install the Evening Sky Plus Evening Custom Reflections Kit, and in general about changing the textures of the sky and changing reflections for specific events. Reflections are one of the main elements of the realism of computer graphics. For this reason, they need to take more time to analyze. Now I will briefly tell you how reflections are arranged and how to install them. Two files are required for the reflections to work as correctly as possible: the reflection file itself and the shiny file, which stores information about how the reflections will be located on the car. After downloading the archive with the reflection files, you will see two files there. One of them is responsible for reflections in clear weather, the other in cloudy weather. Both of these files should be placed in the folder of each track on which you would like to see such reflections. Daytime reflections should be put in the Daytime Tracks folder, evening reflections in the Evening Tracks folder, and night reflections in the Night Tracks folder. For example, I have custom evening sky textures installed for Darlington. Accordingly, you need to put evening reflections there. There is no need to talk about the influence of reflections on realism, everything is clear here. But what effect does shiny files have on graphics? I'll try to show you now. One of the most striking examples is the CWS 2015 trucks. Reflections are located all over the body and sometimes look a little ridiculous. The shiny file fixes some bugs and positions the reflections more correctly on the truck. Thanks to the shiny file, the brightness and concentration of reflections on the front and sides of the truck are reduced. Reflections have become softer and less intrusive. I personally prepared and edited more than 15 shiny files for the main NASCAR series. The installation is simple. You need to put the shiny file of the series you need in the folder of this series. For example, you are using the 2019 mod. To do this, you need to open the folder of this mod in the archive and move the shiny file to the folder of this series in the game directory. And now let's briefly summarize. 1. Download and install the sky textures, in the shared folder or in each track separately. 2. Download and install reflections, in each track separately. 3. Download and install the shiny files of the series you need, in each series separately. Now let's move on to other, less significant improvements, such as darkened underbody and smoke. Dark underbody is also a pretty important part of this game. By default, the textures are lighter colors, closer to white and gray, which does not look very realistic, given that the lower part of the car is always in shadow. These small textural corrections are aimed at realism and their impact may be underestimated. At the moment, textures for Next Gen, NXS20 and NNC07 are ready, links in the description. The installation is simple. You need to put the archive files in the folder of the series you need. Smoke is also a very important thing in the world of NASCAR, so it also needs to be given time. In fact, the community did a good job and made some great smoke textures. Personally, in this case, I took a small step from realism to a more beautiful picture. I chose a less realistic, white, but voluminous smoke. The volume effect here is created by a small shadow. This can be seen on the footages. As you can see, the smoke is layered and it is with these textures that I get a small shadow, which creates this volumetric effect. In some moments it looks very voluminous, at the level of the volumetric smoke of the Grid series. I'll leave links to everything in the video description. I also want to mention the work of James Hodge, who also edited a bunch of effects. I use his sparks and some lighting effects. The choice of smoke is according to your taste. The James version is more realistic in terms of color, in my opinion. And before we go any further, make sure that your settings match mine, especially pay attention to the gamma settings. It is better to turn off the shadows from the structures for now, we will return to them later. Now let's get to the most important thing, to what you all came for, Reshade, its installation and review. And I haven't forgotten yet, don't forget to make a backup of the main game files. The recommended system requirements for my presets will also be shown on the screen. Let's start, perhaps, with the most important thing, the installation. To show everything clearly, I deleted Reshade from my computer and will now install it again. In order not to be unfounded, I will launch the game. As you can see, there are no pop-up notifications for Reshade, it has been deleted. First of all, you need the Reshade program itself. Go to the official website and download it. After downloading, open the program, specify the path to the exe file of the game. Next, select Vulkan. Uncheck all the boxes in the effects. Wait for the installation. Everything is ready. Congratulations! But that's not all. Now let's install my set of presets and a set of graphics. After opening the corresponding archive, you will notice two folders. One of the folders stores the data that needs to be put in the game directory. These are effects files and D3D files for displaying shadows from structures. All this just needs to be put in the folder with the game. Now let's check how everything works. Log into the game. If everything is done correctly, there will be a notification from Reshade on top. By pressing home you can open the Reshade menu. If you did everything right, then you will have the same thing on the screen as me. After that, it remains to install my presets. Open the second folder in the archive. You can put the folder with presets wherever it is more convenient for you, it doesn't matter. In my example, I will put this folder in the game directory. Now let's check how everything works. At the same time I will immediately tell you about some important things. Go into the game, open the Reshade menu with the home key. At the top, in the search bar, you need to select the TV presets folder, which contains all my presets. Open the folder and choose any one you like. In my case, I will open the 2023 roof cam. Do not pay attention to the red labels. Now an important note, if you plan to play with the next gen mod, be sure to go to the settings and turn off the shadows from structures item. If you play on any other mod, you can turn on these shadows, they will not cause problems. Now let's run any track and check how the effects work. Severe blurring of some image fragments is a side effect of motion blur, it is okay. As you can see, Reshade works, the picture also looks great. Now you need to highlight one important function. Go to the Add-ons tab and enable the Copy Depth Buffer before Cleaning Operations function. Thanks to this, the MXOW effect will start working correctly and will cast shadows under cars and near objects, creating global shading. Now let's go into the Reshade settings and turn on the FPS display to make it easier to monitor performance. After that, let's assign a key to turn on/off the reshade effects. This way you can turn off the effects at any desired moment or compare the graphics of the original game in reshade processing. For myself, I set the effects off button on scroll lock. You can try different presets. Switching takes place through the top search bar. Now I will tell you a little about the optimization of my presets, about the most demanding effect. These are MXOW and Immerse MXOW. Even one at a time, they have a very strong impact on performance because they create global shading. This effect is key in my presets. In general, the standard graphics of the game are quite realistic. The only serious effect that it lacked was SOW or any other kind of shading. MXOW obscures the bottom of the car, wheel arches and other spaces. This is especially noticeable on the side of the car that is in the shade. By switching the reshade effects, you can see that by default there is nothing under the cars. There are no shadows. MXOW creates the presence effect that any modern game needs so much. Thus, if you have performance problems, first of all find and turn off the MXOW effect. Yes, you will lose in quality and realism, but you will gain in productivity. Also, if you are not a fan of blurring, you can turn off the shade motion blur effect. It has almost no effect on performance, but its absence will simplify life for those who do not like blurring. I also note right away that when playing from the cockpit, you may notice transparency. Unfortunately, this is a side effect of MXOW and it's hard to get rid of it. Skynet 3D wrote about it. Therefore, if you want to use all the graphical improvements, you will have to put up with the transparency of the cockpit and smoke. Now let's explain how to use my presets correctly, tell you about their classification and demonstrate. There are other folders in the presets folder, but these 3 presets are not in folders. The first 2 are my first presets, the main purpose of which is a beautiful picture. They don't have a goal to make the game more realistic, they make the game more beautiful. There is also a fairly well-known iRacing preset, which tries to bring the game as close to iRacing as possible. Next is a folder with universal presets. There are presets that look good on any track, in any weather and time of day. They are not adapted to specific tracks. Next is a folder with TV presets. These are presets created from recordings of TV cameras from different times and eras of NASCAR, for lovers of atmosphere and immersion. And in the last folder there are presets that I created specifically for the track, based on onboard race recordings. I tried to convey the color scheme and effects, for more realism. You can use them on other tracks, but I can't guarantee that they will look as good, because the color of the asphalt, grass, barriers and other things may differ on the tracks. Just try it. There are also 2 roof camera presets, they are universal. Now let me demonstrate the basic presets, tell you about a couple of effects and compare them with real recordings of races. This is my very first preset. I started with it. It is not aimed at realism. Then I wanted to make the picture more beautiful and spectacular. Here you can notice a large amount of white, highlights and contrast. Overall, the preset is still very good. Besides, I've refined it to include new effects. This is the second version of my preset, also aimed at the beauty and effect of the image. As you can see, a large amount of white and all sorts of highlights have been eliminated. Now the preset is more contrasting, with a more realistic color scheme and with a sharp effect that adds some zest. This preset looks great on any track, however, it can have an impact on FPS. This preset was quite popular at the time. In general, it is unique in its essence. This is the simplest preset I've ever done, but many people really liked it because of its realism. Just like iRacing, in this preset, I tried to convey all the simplicity and realism of the iRacing graphics. I tried to convey the gray color filter and a nondescript but realistic picture. A set of reflection files also goes with this preset. It may look very dim against the background of past presets, but it's still very good. For my TV presets, I reviewed many recordings of old races, tried to convey this atmosphere and image as accurately as possible. Reshade has provided a fairly large number of effects simulating old images. I tried, as if imitating the progress of TV pictures, to improve the quality with each new era, based on TV replays. It turned out to be atmospheric. I think there will be fans of this here. I will immediately inform you that some effects of TV presets distort the image, which may cause problems with displaying menu items in the interface. Personally, I just turn off Reshade and turn it on only during the race. Now let's move on to realistic presets based on onboard recordings of modern racing. First, I will demonstrate two universal presets of roof cameras, which I created while watching onboard recordings. The first preset is grayer, the shadows are dark and black, the coatings are relatively light, the color rendering is moderate, while the second preset has bluish shadows, a darker coating, a slightly more contrasting picture and more saturated colors. Both presets, in general, are realistic and have a place to be. There is a choice for your taste. I made two presets, because on some recordings I got a more contrasting image. It also depends on the weather, and on others it was darker and dimmer. Look at the situation and choose what you like best. Both presets are universal. Now let's move on to the track presets that were prepared specifically for specific tracks. Let's go alphabetically and start with Rainy Chicago. I say right away, because of the reflections, this preset is one of the most demanding. I've reviewed several replays of Chicago. I didn't really like the race, but I really wanted to convey that rainy atmosphere. It was a kind of challenge. As a result, the preset turned out to be massive, using new effects. The main task that faced me was not to overdo it with reflections on the asphalt, because it looks beautiful, but in fact, on a real replay, there were not so many reflections on the asphalt. The color scheme is more towards gray and blue. I also note that for a correct and realistic display, it is advisable to use cloudy weather. Let's move on. Cloudy Daytona 2020. There is a certain simplicity in cloudy weather, because there are not so many colors, but nevertheless I spent a little more time on this preset than I expected. The fact is that the track and the surroundings should be dull, gray and unsaturated, while the cars still look quite bright against the background of the gray environment. I've been working on colors for a long time. In terms of effects, there is nothing special in the preset, bloom, sow, blur and color correction. I've tried this preset on other tracks in cloudy weather and I can say that this preset also looks good. It can practically be considered universal for cloudy weather. Now let's move on to the evening Daytona. It is usually customary to divide tracks into day and night, but evening and sunset attracted me. I wanted to try to implement this time of day as accurately as possible. The entire evening Daytona preset is based on color correction. The night version of the track is taken as a basis, with modified textures of the sky. These textures will be included. All you need is to set the textures of the sky and launch the night Daytona. In fact, The preset can be considered universal. You can set the textures of the evening sky to any track and use the evening preset. I think it will look good everywhere. In this case, it is advisable to use the night versions of the tracks. Daytona sunset, the boundary time between afternoon and evening. There is a certain difficulty and challenge in this. In addition to color correction, this preset is also equipped with new reflections. You can notice them, since the car models are not perfectly smoothed. The edges of the normals are visible, but this does not bother me personally. The new reflection effect gives a greater sense of volume and depth, taking the image to a new level. Now I'm going to take a closer look at the effect of reflections. For this preset, you need to use the daytime version of the track with the usual daytime textures of the sky and reflections. As you can see, the effect of the reflected sun and track is created. It adds more realism. In general, the effect is simple. Perhaps soon I will prepare matcap files for each preset so that the reflection data is everywhere. It's time to move on to Las Vegas. This is a pretty popular preset. He attracted the attention of a lot of people with his realism. In fact, the whole trick here is also in color correction. A lot of blue color has been added to the shadows. This preset, like the others, is equipped with basic visual effects. Overall, it is very similar to the classic universal roof cam preset, only with a lot of blue in the shadows. You can try using it on other tracks as well. I have been working on the night Daytona for a long time and finally got a result that suits me. Several new effects have been added, and color correction has been changed. But there were nuances. There are bright wide highlights. You can try this preset on other night tracks, but there will be a lot of wide highlights. The problem is that you need to make the white color bright so that the track lighting looks bright. Nevertheless, the white color on cars is also sometimes illuminated. Personally, everything suits me so far. I recently demonstrated this preset on my channel. I also worked on the color in the exposition here. The only noticeable note is that the textures of the track are lighter in cloudy weather. Nevertheless, the preset is realistic, sometimes even too much. The game shows itself through the rendering of the track, which is visible in the distance. Otherwise, the preset is almost perfect. You can also try it on other tracks. I recently tried it on Bristol. It looks good. That's all for now. Maybe while I'm doing the tutorial, I'll make a couple more presets, so don't be surprised if you find more presets than in the video. Also, particularly attentive viewers, those who follow my channel, may have noticed that I did not show the Darlington preset. The fact is that I reviewed a bunch of Darlington's onboard replays and came to the conclusion that my preset is beautiful, but far from realistic. Therefore, I decided to mention it separately. It's not bad, but it's far from a real onboard recording. I'll update it later, and now I'll just demonstrate. Now let me explain how I do the fisheye effect on the roof camera. Let's take next gen as an example. Make sure that the shadows from the structures are turned off and run any track, for example Daytona. Let's waste some time and choose any driver. I came across Denny Hamlin, but let's better choose a blacker car so that there is less brightness and contrast. This one will do. Now let's choose the appropriate preset. You can choose any one, but in this case I will choose the roof camera one. Now launch the free camera. Go back to the game and press the Ctrl+B combination. After that, you will find yourself in the cab of the car. Now press Ctrl+E and position a camera on the roof of the car. As soon as you can position the camera, hold X until your vision increases to the maximum possible. After that, open the Reshade menu and find an effect called Pantomorphic there. It is already set to the required number of degrees. I will immediately note that you will need to turn off the immerse mxow effect so that there are no black marks. Now you have the fisheye effect. You can also increase or decrease the viewing angle in the effect settings. Do not forget that this effect reduces the image quality. I will also give you a couple of tips on how you can improve your screenshots using Reshade. It is advisable to use the 2-3-1 version for this. Let's also press the Ctrl+B combination, activate the camera and see what we can add. The most basic is global shading. Even if you have a weak PC, you can enable shading for screenshots. FiDANZA, SAO and immerse mxow are useful here. They can be combined to your liking, but I will still focus on mxow, as this updated effect creates the best shading at the moment, of all that I have. The effect of depth of field also adds realism. In our case, the effect is called Date Off. It automatically focuses on objects, blurring the rest of the elements. This will add realism to the screenshot. Watching my channel, you might also have noticed a video where I use a helmet overlay. In some cases, I use dirt on the camera. By itself, the overlay is activated through the Reshade menu. The effect is called Overlay. To change the texture of the overlay, you need to go to the game directory, find the Reshade Shaders folder there, then go to Textures and find Overlay PNG there. Reshade will use a file called Overlay. Rename the desired texture, and name the second, unnecessary one differently so that the game does not use it. This way you can change the helmet for dirt. The only problem is that you won't be able to use both the helmet and the dirt on the camera at the same time, for obvious reasons. Just open the Reshade menu, find the overlay effect and turn it on. Also, by right-clicking on the effect, you can assign a hotkey to turn off the effect at any time, without opening the Reshade menu. I also note that the helmet overlay overlaps the interface elements, so it may be inconvenient. Now let's move on to optimization and performance. I touched on this topic a little earlier, but now I'll tell you a little more. I conducted a survey on my channel about your computers, and based on the data I received, I came to the conclusion that many of my viewers will have obvious performance problems. The new presets, compared to the old ones, have more effects that affect performance and require serious efforts from the video card. If you use classic daytime track presets, except rain ones, then the main thing you need to turn off is mxow. If this is not enough, then turn off all types of anti-aliasing. These are SMAA and FXAA. Immerse MXOW also needs to be turned off. This way you will have a noticeable increase in FPS, however, the image will be less realistic and beautiful. In fact, all my presets are built around MXAO, so by turning off this effect, you will lose the beauty and realism of the image. Also, if you have a weak PC, I do not advise you to use the rain preset. I also want to pay attention to Daytona, especially at night. I use the BBMC track. If on other tracks I get stable 130 to 140 FPS, then on a night Daytona, closer to the pit lane, my FPS can drop down to 70 to 60 FPS, and this is considering the fact that I have a new RTX 4060. On weak systems, the load can be very high. Test it. Try to turn off some effects. You can turn them off one by one and see how many FPS you can get. Otherwise, if you fail to stabilize FPS, it is better not to use reshade on such tracks or not to use it at all, so as not to unnecessarily load your computer. If you notice that your image and shadows are flashing, then open the reshade menu, go to the add-ons tab and turn on clear to. But what if you did everything right and nothing works for you? There may be several reasons for this. The first obvious reason is that I messed up somewhere in the tutorial. The second reason is that you did something wrong yourself, followed the instructions incorrectly. This may well be the case too. Try to review the tutorial and see where you could have made a mistake. It is also quite possible that there are system or software differences that do not allow programs to work correctly. You see, for some people, everything worked out according to my previous text tutorial. It wasn't perfect either. However, many people did not succeed, although they did everything right. I personally double-checked everything with them and realized that they did everything right, but despite this, reshade did not work correctly. There are such cases and, unfortunately, I can't do anything about them. It can also be different versions of reshade. Constant updates to reshade are good, of course, but on the other hand, new versions may conflict with the effects of previous versions and just work differently, so just in case, I'll leave a link to the version of reshade that I used for this tutorial. If you have a different version, try downloading the one I have, the link will be in the description.